know it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Greetings, sisters. So on the weekend where the Puskás goal of the season was almost definitely scored, please go and check out Zielinski's goal, for instance, if you haven't already. Pure art. Here we are again to ask if it's time for katanas to be drawn, yaris to be unsheathed, and odachis to be wielded. Okay, maybe I'm playing too much Ghost of Yote at the moment, but the main point is what we'll explore today. Joined as always by Sam. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Other than I really didn't understand any of those references, but I have heard good things about that game, much better than I've heard about Football Manager. So maybe it's a game I should look at exploring in my free time, whereas at the moment, all of my free time's going on more football-related activities. So yeah, all good. Game week 10 was an interesting one, but I'm looking forward to figuring out what on earth we're doing ahead of game week 11. As always, we are Who Got the Assist. On today's agenda, we'll have a quick look back at game week 10 as always. And then the theme of today's pod will be whether or not it is time to go on the attack. With the game week 16, 5 free transfers on the horizon, those free transfers obviously being the AFCON ones. Does it change our view on if rolling is always best around now, or can we be a little bit more aggressive with our moves? Form versus fixtures, of course, makes a return. Lots of faces maybe suiting that this week in particular, plus a couple who have put their hand up a little bit more recently. 1 week punts makes a return. Could you back against Haaland possibly as part of the captaincy candidates this week? And of course, finally, our teams and a few questions on, or a few questions or two to ask one another rather. Tuesday, the 4th of November. It's the 4th, right? Yeah, 4th of November. So European action is going on in the background. It's 2 nights of Champions League, so we've got tomorrow to worry about too. So we would probably advise holding off on those transfers if you can. But a few people will have, of course, made moves early, and you're no stranger to early moves, are you, Tom? So why don't we have a look at how those early moves last week went for you in game week 10?
Yeah, very good week for me. 2 free transfers are rolled the third, and thankfully, given events which have transpired since, which we'll speak about in a minute. Did Reinders out for Minter for +8, so 9 for Minter. I think Reinders came off the bench. 2 assists, and I mean, I watched the second assist back several times, Sam, and then the one that was originally given to Ruta. That was the most fortuitous thing I've ever got in FPL. I think as a micro touch at best, the sort of touch that Harry Kane would swear on his daughter's life he got, like absolutely ridiculous. And then Pedro out for Mateta, which thankfully washed its face, and I got very fortunate, frankly. The Brazilians should have done much more there. More on him anon. But yeah, 85 points overall, aside from new signings, returns from double Arsenal defence, returning Anderson, getting a clean sheet, which was nice, an assist for Fernandes, and a first half goal from a now injured Gyökeres. More on him later as well. And of course, 8 out of 11 returns, had 7 out of 7 on Saturday, which must be a first. But Semenyo, obviously Gordon, who's definitely being yeeted out now. There's no way in hell I'm keeping him in my team. And Tarkowski at the Blankers. Tarko's interesting one, I thought. I've definitely overpaid there. As I posted on socials last night, I was watching the bulk of that game. I'm not sure why I was, Sam. Normally I'm really time poor. I don't know what came over me. And it was notable he was more like the sitting sort of cat centre back, while Keane, who got DEFCONs in the first half, he was really aggressive and he got DEFCONs so fast. And
yeah, by half time, yeah.
I've definitely overpaid here. It's not a problem per se, I definitely feel like I underestimated the impact maybe of a different defensive partnership with Keane now in. Maybe Branthwaite was the one sitting last year and Tarko was the one who was, according to the DEFCONs at least, maybe being more aggressive. Anyway, sorry, that was a totally pointless digression. He got 2 points. 5th green arrow in a row for me, Sam. Up to the lofty heights of, checks notes again, 1.9 million this season, honestly. But hey, there we go. 5 greens in a row. Hasn't got me very far. What about you? How'd you do?
Well, first off, I think that's probably a better game week rank than either of us have had at all this season. So congratulations. It's a big move up, and 1.9 million, you can start really having your sights locked in on top 1 million soon. I think the season's back, and I think that 5th green arrow in a row is looking very positive. So if you're not going to be the optimist, I will do it on your behalf. My week was not quite as good, although again, I'm not I'm not particularly annoyed by it. 73 points from me. I basically remained exactly where I was in the previous game week at about 950k. I think I went down something like 3.5k. So it was about as grey as you can get at this sort of rank. In goal, Pope losing his clean sheet, and Newcastle looking pretty awful, especially against West Ham of all teams. That was quite concerning. Did pick up 2 save points though. In my back line, it was clean sheets all around. So Gabriel, again, 12 points from him. Congratulations to anyone who captained him, of course. Looked like a pretty good call. Obviously, a bit unfortunate that the popular captain also went and matched him. But, you know, yeah, I think so. And obviously could have ended up on 14 points if it wasn't for the yellow card at the end, also removing a bonus point, whatever. Timber 6, Anderson 6. Anderson nowhere near DEFCON, but it is worth noting that that was in a match where they were playing against 10 men for a good 55 minutes. Wolves did very little attacking, so I'm not massively surprised that his DEFCON dropped off, and I'm not particularly concerned by that. Into my midfield, blanks all around for the second week running, I believe, which is very concerning considering the amount of money being spent there. Saka 3, Sarr 3, Semenyo and Enzo both 2. Enzo pretty unlucky not to get any sort of return, I would say. Saka 2 big chances missed, and Sarr hit the post. So I think on another week that could have looked a lot more positive, and I don't want to overreact to a couple of blanks, but obviously 2 weeks in a row with blanking midfielders, not good news and not what you want to see. Up front, Erling Haaland 13 points. We'll just take that to the bank at this rate. And João Pedro and Voltemade are both much more interesting to talk about. I did hold on to João Pedro and my free transfers, so I was delighted that he got his 9-pointer. And like you say, I think he was a little bit unfortunate not to get more. Not unfortunate from the perspective of, okay, he should have done better with his finishes. So arguably not unfortunate at all because he should have done better. But from the perspective that he even got those chances in the first place, Vicario did make a good couple of saves there. And of course, Gittins probably should have done a bit better with that pass in the 90th odd minute. So yeah, 9 points. I'm still very happy, but it could have been more. And Voltemade is all of a sudden the main concern in my forward line. And who saw that coming? Off at half time, 1-pointer. And yeah, quite concerned about that one. On my bench, I wouldn't really normally be talking about it, but Longstaff coming off at 59 minutes has been a particular concern for me looking at bench boosting in the next 1 or 2 game weeks. So I'll probably discuss that a little bit later on. And I've got a few 4.9 million replacements lined up if I do feel the need to move him on.
So exciting.
Which we discussed about making the whole theme of the pod, but I don't want to be that cruel to all of you. So we'll talk about that in like 20 seconds later on. But yeah, 73 points, treading water, and 3 free transfers. So today's pod, a topic is going to be particularly interesting to me because I do have the opportunity to go on the attack if I want to.
Certainly. I mean, I think with the Newcastle point, I did have a look at that because I was a bit like, oh, that's weird because I was expecting to be like missing out on a clean sheet on that in that game. I'm not going to lie. I actually designate that as the supermarket shows, the supermarket game, so I could watch the Bournemouth City game. But yeah, I'd look at the stats afterwards, and Newcastle got lots of chances, right? And it's their single worst away performance for XGC. Obviously, the season's still relatively young. It was more than double their next highest outlay away from home. So I just wonder whether it's a bad day at the office. Like their away XGC data, they're the second best defensive team away from home according to the data with 5 away games. They haven't won one yet, and I think there were a couple of very, very desultory 0-0s in that, which may be kind of distorting that a little bit. But if you with Pope, or if you're sat over Dan Burn or something, I wouldn't be too worried about it. I think it may be just kind of a bit of a bad day at the office more than anything else. Yeah, I just have to see. I know what you mean about Voltemade though. I think probably the situation's different between Voltemade and Gordon, which we will almost definitely discuss at the very end. No, interesting times for both of us. So on to the key topic this week, which is time to attack. I thought this might be an interesting one to sink our teeth into, as the 5 FTs due to AFCON are on the horizon now. And we're wondering if, in a world where we are saying, hey, as you said earlier on, Sam, it's probably preferable to roll your transfer whenever you can. With us basically being forced to have 5 free transfers in 5 weeks' time.
How dare they?
Will the calculus change? Yeah, exactly. Obviously, the context here is that in game week 16, due to AFCON, FPL at the start of the season, the infinite wisdom said that we should get 5 free transfers at that point when the tournament starts and all the AFCON affected players go away. Now, for me, I haven't got any of these affected players, so I'm looking at it in a particular lens. But I was having a chat with someone in the office today who has Bumo and Dai and Saar, and he said, "Well, actually, I've got 3 players who are going away, so
Yeah.
that's actually really useful for me." Whereas for me, it felt sort of when I first looked at it, I was thinking, oh, came back to thinking about it again after we thought about it kind of at the start of the season. Oh, that's kind of faintly ludicrous, and I put on the chat, didn't I? Maybe they might regret that now in hindsight, but I suppose it's very kind of team dependent how useful that is for you, depending on the picks that you've made, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we'll try to explore in this pod is the different ways that we can take advantage of those 5 free transfers that go beyond what the average manager you mentioned someone in the office there who might not even know it's coming until the last minute and then be like, oh wait, I've got 3 or 4 AFCON bound players, I can sort that out without any hits required. That to us maybe to begin with felt like a bit of an advantage or a leveling of the playing field, where normally having that information in advance is something that we'd take and use to our own advantage, get rid of the AFCON players ahead of time and laugh at everyone who's stuck with them by the time they go off. Well, actually, this year we can probably use the 5 free transfers in a slightly different way to those of the players who don't know it's even coming in the first place and need to use them on the AFCON players, because you can just keep rolling them through if you want to. And it also can change the way that we use our transfers building up to game week 16 in the knowledge that we've got the 5 free transfers at that point. Whereas a lot of the more, let's say, I hate the word casual, but the casual managers out there who don't know it's coming probably will just be playing week to week like they normally would, not blissfully unaware even of the fact that this is coming, and they won't be able or feel the need to take advantage of going more aggressive between now and then. Or by the time they get to 5 free transfers, they'll probably use a lot of them straight away and not have them saved up for later on in the season. So there's an aggressive way of approaching this, and maybe a more defensive, more tactical way, which is using those free transfers much later on to set up for bench boost in the second half, wildcard, maybe stopgap if you want to as well, setting up for double game weeks, things like that, that other people will probably not be able to because they have to use it on getting rid of AFCON players.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting conundrum, and this year, and we'll come on to this more next week when we talk more about kind of what's happened to the template this year. It's certainly really a bit of a horse for courses thing. I just think back to last week, Sam, really, when we were speaking about the patience versus proactivity thing, and we said that in situations where you have an upcoming sort of get out of jail free card, like a wild card, and even then you may not kind of go for a 1 week pump because you can roll through. Like I feel like the only case actually, other than this game week 16 where you're forced to have 5 free transfers, is game week 38, where you suddenly have this sort of scenario, I suppose, where you can potentially be a bit more aggressive.
Use them or lose them. Yeah,
exactly. And I still think, to kind of go into the points you were making, maybe echoed them a tiny bit. I think that, in terms of what this means for planning, I still think it's important. I mean, strategically, you can pick up players you might want for the long term. So, for example, in a bit, we'll discuss Declan Rice in form versus fixtures. And some may be thinking of, just getting him in and leaving him there, especially if an Arsenal spot free with Gyökeres's injury. We were trying to get money to downgrade Saka, but you still want free Arsenal. But I think that enforced sort of refreshed safety net certainly signals a bit of a shift. And I think there's kind of 2 ways of looking at it. I think you've kind of already given voice to them. On one hand, you can kind of now look at some of these more short-term picks, and on the screen, and we're not going to talk through this all, but if you are watching on YouTube, a few screens are from FPL, a few teams from FPL team I've picked out who do have a good single fixture or a few kind of good fixtures coming on, and obviously City and Liverpool who have got that good kind of midi/maxi swing coming. Won't go through them all, but we'll use them as a reference point. So on one hand, you can look at some of those more short-term picks, even down to, Jared Bowen versus West Ham just this week against Burnley. And I don't know, maybe be okay with potentially moving toward a partial dead end, knowing your team can use 5 free transfers at the end to get out of it. So that's one way you can look at it. which I think you kind of voiced over. And the other way, which I think that we're both going to be probably looking at this ourselves, is that as an engaged manager, and this is something that we spoke about at the start of the year, and everyone was really down on this and saying, oh, the casuals have been given this huge sort of gift by FPL. And actually what we said, I think we were probably one of the only kind of shows who were saying it. What we said was that this could actually be a really good big benefit for the planners, because we've got this kind of enforced 5 free transfers. So we can kind of gamify it a little bit and probably use it to find an edge. Because if you're an engaged manager with a penchant for planning like we are, a way of looking at it realistically is chunking up the upcoming period into pre-game week 16 and post-game week 16, and maybe adopting a different mentality for each. So pre-game week 16, you can be maybe slightly more aggressive, but still have that eye on players with longevity where you can. And post, you can probably leave that open for now. But as you said, retaining those frees as a high bank sort of baseline to be used as an insurance or used to really attack kind of swings after that, maybe after the busy Christmas period, could be a really good kind of strategy for us to sort of pursue here. So I think it's definitely horses for courses, and there's lots of ways of looking at it depending on kind of the situation you find yourself in. I mean, does your thoughts sort of broadly echo that, don't they, in terms of what the 5 free transfers means for planning?
Yeah, I agree completely with everything you said there. And I think what will be really interesting is as we get closer to game week 15, 16, where it's actually game week 15 I'm more interested in, because we know game week 16 is when you get the 5 frees. So it's game week 15 that is going to be that biting point where you have to either use the free transfers you've got left, or you will effectively lose them because everyone just gets reset up to 5 the next week. So you can actually look at game week 15 as we could do some 1 week punts, or you can use the transfers in a more, I almost said boring way, but like in a more conservative way. Either way, using them is the right way of playing it, but using them in a more conservative way to set up your team long term, and maybe get rid of the AFCON players at that point, if you've even got any, or just secure your side with any remaining free transfers. Maybe figure out those edge pieces. The 4 million defender you don't really want anymore, you can change them to a different one, sort out a goalkeeper, just restructure a little bit. And then by the time you get to game week 16 and you get the 5 free transfers, you've spent all of the ones that you effectively had to bin anyway, and you're already set up without needing to use those extra 5, maybe with 1 free transfer ready to go, because obviously you can't roll to 6, so you'll have to use 1 in game week 16. But then after that, you can just continue to use 1 a week all the way through to the point where you've got a bit of a crisis. But because you've already set up your team in a pretty conservative way around about game week 15, before the 5 frees, you're hopefully not going to need to break glass in case of emergency too quickly. And those 5 frees could actually end up resulting in a mini wildcard around a double game week or something, or to shield you against a blank game week rather than using a chip. So I think the long-term benefit of maybe using it as game week 15 being that biting point, then 16 start rolling from there, it could be really, really powerful for the planners out there. And a lot comes down to what you start thinking about with your transfers now, because those of you who've got 1 free transfer right now, are you going to save a few free transfers up and then secure your team in around game week 14, 15 with a batch of them? Or are you going to, like you say, go on the attack, use them week to week, and fill up with a few short-term punts, knowing that game week 15, you're just going to be able to start, and 16 when you get the 5 frees, then remold your side in a more conservative long-term plan. Which of those are you more tempted by at the moment, Tom? Is any specific route more your taste, and what would swing you the other way potentially?
I think I'm very open, Sam, to a more sort of short-term like way of looking at it with that safety net in place, I guess. Like,
yeah,
you've got a bit of a period where potentially you've got more retro play potentially in place, where you've got 2 free transfer effects for use it or lose it. Now, there's obviously some risk involved, international breaks coming up, injuries and stuff could really kind of blow things open. But I don't know, looking at kind of the fixtures, which is kind of literally just coming up. So with Chelsea, who have Wolves and Burnley, then they run into Arsenal. Maybe I'd then be looking at, hey, you know what, I'm going to buy João Pedro, and then maybe I'll buy Enzo as well. West Ham, maybe I'd be looking at buying bowing him just for that, and then moving him on to Thiago in game week 12. These sorts of switcheroos, the Huang, may be back on the table for me to some extent. And it feels very nostalgic, Sam, to be thinking about kind of just the 2 free transfers again. I was thinking back to our pod with Simon in last international break, and he was saying, the value of rolling free transfers diminishing ahead of game week 16 effectively. And I think that's kind of a case of, that's kind of true. To some extent, because as you said, there is a lot of value in setting your team up properly. And as you were talking about it, I was thinking, you mentioned chips as well, and I wonder whether using those 5 free transfers going forward, based if you plan your kind of transfers now to be a long-term pick, so like a Thiago, and if you do kind of plan your transfers now to kind of service long-term, although there is some good short-term, so maybe some sort of element of the 2, you could feasibly see that have knock-on effects for your chip usage in the second half. So your bench boost, if you want to get that out of the way, you could deal with that with 5 free transfers rather than having to wildcard then bench boost, if that makes sense. You can bench boost out of your bench boost. It might save you, as you said, the free hit. So your free hit, you can use it more aggressively rather than defensively. There's loads of potential kind of use cases and applications of these 5 free transfers, which I don't know if FPL actually, I'm sure they did anticipate because Subban's at the wheel. But I think that they thought the mainstream way of kind of dealing with the 5 free transfers was to be removing Mo Salah from your team. And I don't think apart from you, the diehard Mo Salah ultra, I don't know if there are that many people who are considering trying to tear their team apart to bring him back in a couple of weeks' time. So I think there is an opportunity to be had here, and I think it's particularly interesting when you're looking at players like if you only Gyökeres, if you want to move on the midfielder or something like that this week. So someone like me with Anthony Gordon, and there's definitely a few kind of players who do sort of put their hand up a little bit when it comes to that. And I do think kind of it sounds really kind of a bit of a cop out, but sort of a hybrid approach is probably the best way of looking at it, I think, where I think if you can get that sort of longer term target. So I was saying to you earlier on, with the Gyökeres replacement, I'm looking at getting maybe João Pedro back, and I absolutely love that loads of people keep saying this. It's like having a having a post breakup one night with your ex if you buy João Pedro back for 2 weeks. It's not going to stop me from considering him seriously, but I can completely understand where that's coming from. Talk about João Pedro in a minute.
You got the drunk text.
Yeah,
you're gonna do it.
You out, or sort of player like Thiago. Yeah, okay, I get that, but also because I've got 2 transfers this week. I think maybe one of them, what I do is then I look at a shorter term pick like an Enzo for Wolves and Burnley with a plan to then move him on to probably Gakpo in game week 13, and kind of just take it. I suppose on a case-by-case basis, which again is such a cop-out. But I think a lot of the time it kind of doesn't serve you to just be strongly in one camp rather than the other. What I do kind of like, and I guess maybe I'm recalling the spirit of that of that kind of post features of this year's FPL reveal, and we're both kind of quite enthusiastic about it. What I quite like is that there are lots of ways you can play with this and lots of ways you can kind of differentiate it. And okay, I'm 1.9 million, and I was speaking to Fruki, I think it was, on Blue Sky earlier on. He was saying, it's really tough this year, and maybe there's a little bit of disengagement. Kind of get that, but also I kind of quite like the fact that even though I'm not doing that great in terms of the rank, I do feel like I'm quite engaged with this year because of the possibilities which are out there. It's a lot more diverse than it was before, even though there are arguments on the other side to say that there's quite a depressed player base in some way, shape, or forms. Basically, Sam, hybrid approach is the way I'm kind of looking at it, I think. But I am quite, I'm obviously it's me, so I'm quite tempted to double down, get both Chelsea players in this week, and then kind of just work it out from there. Take some hits, figure it out from there. No, What about you? I suppose you're kind of more on the kind of strategic side, long-term picks with your transfers. There's a few things you said you could do as well.
Yeah, so approaching this period where I've already got 3 free transfers going into game week 11 anyway, it does give me kind of 2 different paths I can go down. That meme with the one's a sunny rainbow side and one's like a dark dungeon or whatever. I do wonder which path is which in this case, but I could start being aggressive in either of the next 2 game weeks. So I can either go aggressive now or potentially wait a week until I've got 4 free transfers in game week 12. that would provide me an opportunity to go aggressive on Liverpool. Mo Salah is still an option available to me if I have 4 free transfers. I don't currently think I'm going to use that option, but either way, having 4 free transfers come game week 12 is effectively going to give me a second bite at that cherry, where I've got the 4 free transfers in 12, then I've got the as many free transfers as I've stacked up in 15, and then 16 as well. So I've got like 3 batches of like transfer mega hauls that I can potentially go and grab. It's just whether or not I use them appropriately. So either way, the underlying thing I'm trying to remember is I can't be stacking my transfers past game week 15. So I need to find the most opportune moments of the greatest upside between now and game week 15 to use those transfers in the most powerful way possible, rather than aimlessly rolling them to game week 14, 15, and then being like, oh, I suppose I better use these. There's nothing really impactful I can do. I've missed out on some of the big fixture swings. I might as well just mess around with my 4 million defender, like I said earlier, or my goalkeeper, or what, and not really high impact transfers. Whereas looking at the fixtures on screen, there are some fixture swings here that are worth attacking that I can also hold on to players for afterwards. So Man United's a perfect one here, who have some great home fixtures in there, a great long-term set of fixtures even after AFCON has started, and a player like Bruno Fernandes isn't even going to AFCON as well. So it, like you say, the hybrid approach where, okay, go aggressive on the transfers, but use some of those transfers to set you up for the long term. Then by the time you get to game week 16, you've used all of your transfers, your team's in a better place, and you don't immediately then need to use the 5 free transfers in game week 16 to kind of right all of the wrongs. I say wrongs, but right all of the short-term moves that you've put into your side because you were going aggressive. I think if you do too many of them, you're effectively going to just end up burning through your 5 free transfers straight after you get given them, and you won't be able to use them tactically later on. So my strategy is, yes, I want to be aggressive at the right moment between now and game week 15, but I just need to pick what the right moment is. And I'm not completely sure where that's going to be yet. Mo Salah was originally the idea, but I just don't think we're going to, I don't think there's going to be that crowd swell towards him in game week 12, 13 that we initially thought there would be. So I might just have the 3 or 4 free transfers to use in other ways in the next couple of game weeks, which is exciting, but also nerve-wracking because I might just waste them.
I mean, this is why I'd really encourage everybody who's of the predilection to just kind of be a little bit more into FPL, and just to use a planner and just have a look ahead about just literally the next few weeks. As I said, just chunk it up at pre and post game week 16, and the time is now, as Sam said right at the start, to start looking at this, because I'm in a situation where, and again, this is very team specific for me, where I've got 2 free transfers to make this week, and then I go down to one free after the international break, when the fixturing starts Liverpool, and then I've got to try to figure out kind of them, Man City, and what I'm going to do and how I'm going to make that work with kind of the baseline of free transfers, knowing that I've got a use it or lose it situation come game week 15 with that free transfer or 2. And I actually come to a situation, Sam, where I actually kind of feel like I'm going to be, and it won't turn out like this, because obviously there's going to be a lot of football to be played, especially with the 3 game weeks in 7 days. But there is a point where I'm just housekeeping in game week 15, where I'm making, as you said, like a transfer like King to playing 4.5 or something like that for the Christmas period. It will not be this way.
No, it won't.
But it will help. But it just helps you kind of have an idea of kind of, if you're watching Celebrity Traders, like the Hundies, like those players who are 100% coming in for you, and also some sort of potential fallbacks and things you may want to be looking at elsewhere in line with the short-term fixtures swings that we've got over 11 to 15. After that, I think that it's difficult to plan at the moment, because we've got a lot of football to be played before we get to the next period. We'll have FPL General on, of course, before Christmas to preview that with us and kind of get into kind of how we're approaching that period. Always look forward to that Christmas pub with Mark. But yes, really important, I think, to plan. But you can play week to week, which is I think is quite important as well. And I think that's kind of the intent. Maybe I'm kind of doing them a disservice a bit because Mark is there and advising a little bit more. Southerns, that is, not Mark General. Wish he was, because we'd have an inside line to it. But anyway, but I think that the intended use of it was to kind of suit somebody who is playing week to week rather than thinking a bit longer ahead. But that's absolutely fine as well. Like, both are kind of completely valid ways to play. You can kind of min-max FPL as much as you possibly like, and probably minning is better, because maximizing you tend to find you kind of hate FPL if it doesn't go right. Whereas if you min, you're like, meh, it is what it is. Yeah, basically have a look at the plan, and those 5 free transfers, I think, do start to, being forced to take them does kind of, I don't know, it does sort of force you to look at a few more of the shorter term punts, which I do quite like, and does mean you can be more aggressive. And it is the kind of, by that juncture, a bit of a shame that you've got a perma captain at the moment. Maybe game week 12 when City are at Newcastle, maybe that would be one where you might kind of back against and use a transfer there. But
if Ange was still at Forest, I'd be all over Salah that week.
Yeah,
all over it. But no, don't think so.
Yeah, but I do think kind of the central point that I want to make, I'd make, is that there's been such a shift in thinking about, or there will be. I think we're kind of going a bit early on this, but for good reason, because it's all linked together. But I think there will be such a shift in thinking about the 5 free transfers for AFCON, where before it was kind of seen as just being sort of casual's delight, and now I think it is kind of a real sort of way for engaged planners to make hay.
Yeah, and the way to benefit from that is to think about it now. Like you say, you can go on the attack now if you want to. You can have a plan to conserve after the 5 free transfers. The sooner you start thinking about it, the better. So hopefully this section has given you a little bit of something to think about over the next few game weeks on how you might approach the upcoming 5 free transfer area of the season. Cool. Anything else to note on this, or shall we move on to form versus fixture, Tom?
Let's do it. So there'll be a few players in here who may fit this paradigm a little bit, which is quite interesting. I think the top one has to be Danny Welbeck, just because of 5 and 6 goals for that guy, who ages like a fine wine. Do love him. Always good to see one of the older characters have an Indian summer. In terms of the underlying data, 17th overall for non-pen XGI. Palace, the grudge match. Brentford at home in game week 12, and Nottingham Forest in game week 13. He's 5th for big chances overall. Not too many shots, actually, Sam, in terms of the analog data. Half his shots actually have been big chances, if anyone cares about that. So if there's 14 shots, half of them big chances, 7. He scored 4, which is pretty cool. He's actually overperforming his non-penalty expected goals, the second most among strikers too. 3.37 non-pen XGI and non-pen XG, sorry, to 6 goals scored. Just 0.12 of a goal behind Haaland in terms of the overperformance. How long can this continue, Sam? And at that price, is the consideration, do you think?
I'm willing to start believing, but I'm just always nervous with him about a random benching, random minutes downgrade all of a sudden. I think I would still need to see it happen for a bit longer. Also, age unfortunately does come into it a little bit. He probably won't play every game or every minute of every game across the Christmas period. And I don't know about you. Like, obviously, we're seeing a lot of Danny Welbeck hype on the timeline, or on a lot of other content creators over the last week. And I get it. Like, I'm willing to be convinced, but I'm just not there yet. I just feel like it's going to be a bit of a hot streak that's going to die back down, because we've seen this so often over his career. He's never hit. Well, okay, until last season, he never hit double digits in the Premier League for goals. He did that last season. I think he got 10 on the dot. So he's 6 already this year. So he's probably going to get past that. But 6 of those goals have already happened. You can't bypass goals. So it's whether or not he's going to be able to continue anywhere near this rate. He might carry on for a while, but every year something seems to happen where he just comes out of the team, or minutes get reduced, or I don't know. Are you more convinced in him than I am? Like, I'm willing to be tempted, and the minutes recently have been good, but something just always puts me off.
Yeah, he's having a purple patch. Simple as. I do love the guy, but he's one of those players that I'd be very happy to buy in draft or own the free hit. simply
Free hit,
because
sure, yeah.
yeah, I think the existence of Minte really for Brighton is the one that probably puts me off him the most. Minte's got the most pen box touches, if anyone cares about that, of the midfielders this year. I think he's in the top 10 for non-pen XGI fairly comfortably, in the top 5 for expected assists. Yeah, and I think that he's probably the slightly better value as well at the price. But in terms of the exact position that Welbeck's in, I think Thiago is surely the one for the kind of the longest term hold.
Bit
Hasn't made
cheaper
it.
as well.
Yeah, he's 6.1. Hasn't made on here this week,
Yeah.
but good minutes, probably penalties, very similar underlying data to Welbeck, and a good fixture run coming up. Like he's in every team for game week 13, Burnley at home, that game that I have planned going forward, and could indeed arguably be a pick in the game against Welbeck in game week 12. They've got Newcastle at home next. So, if I do buy him, I'll be walking into that, which is kind of is what it is, owning him for the long term. But I think Brentford's fixtures do become pretty good after that game's out of the way, and not kind of stellar, but fairly good.
They seem to do well against the better sides as well. Like they'll create him a couple of big chances.
Yeah, it was a tricky game against Arsenal in 14, but
yeah, that maybe not that one.
Yeah, aside from that, their Christmas kind of fixture list. I think they play Spurs twice in 5 weeks, something like that. But
yeah,
their entire
because
kind of Christmas.
There's 2 sets of fixtures which are like the exact mirror,
yeah.
like 4 or 5 weeks apart. Yeah,
That's it. But I think it's between 13 and kind of 20, something like that. I was looking at it earlier on. Like you just want to have him in there and just do it. And plus, because he's cheaper than most third strikers, you didn't then have extra money to invest if you want to kind of have a stronger defender. So it can get you from a Richards to a Gahey or a Munoz, or it could get you into kind of having a better fifth midfielder if you're kind of particularly worried about minutes during Christmas or minutes during 14 to 16. So I think probably Thiago over Welbeck for me, even though I do see why people are going there. People have got like I do think that kind of he's doing pretty well in the transfers in Welbeck. My sister asked me about buying him. I was like, no, don't do that. Just go somewhere else. And obviously it didn't I was not the most loved brother for saying that. But yeah. Next up, Rice Baby, the second highest score in mid now, on fire at the moment. Lots of routes to the point. Could he be the third Arsenal that we're looking for, despite underlying data being a bit on the low side? It's fair to say so.
Yeah, I mean, his underlying data has never been exceptional, but he does tick along at about 1 return in every 3 games on average across his Arsenal career. Like he's been doing pretty well on returns for a couple of years. He will never hit like 30 returns a season or anything crazy like that, but that's like what he does get is around about 10 to 15 attacking returns. Plus, now you can bake in the DEFCON, and of course he is on the set pieces, so maybe that bolsters the attacking return potential just that little bit more as well. Decent value for money. I'm not gonna lie, I am a little bit tempted to downgrade the Saka spot to Rice if I want to keep a third Arsenal in there, just because. I mean, Saka's the better pick if everything was even, if the price wasn't a factor. But the things you can do with that extra 3.3 million is quite crazy when you consider, okay, you're losing penalties, but you're keeping corners from the other side, and Rice's delivery is as good, if not better. Obviously, a lot of attacking returns are coming from them at the moment. His open play threat isn't great, but it's not like defensive midfielder level. It's not Caicedo level, which he's scoring goals anyway, but it's actually reasonable. I don't hate it. I think he's one of those picks that you're always going to think of a better pick at 6.5 million with much more attacking threat, but come the end of the season, he will be up there at 180, 190 points probably, and we're all going to wonder, why did we never own this guy? A bit like Caicedo with a few more attacking returns, really. A little bit less DEFCON, but, it balances out.
Yeah, I do quite fancy buying Rice. I think it's probably just that situational. Like this week, so I'm in the 3-4-3, and I've only got 2 free transfers to make. Probably prefer going with Enzo, we'll speak about in a minute. But yeah, you're right. Ridiculous DEFCONs this week against Burnley of all people at 21. 6 points from DEFCON now, so a hit rate of 33%. He gets DEFCON from 9 starts. second behind Semenyo with Minte, Kudus, and Salah now for attacking returns with 6 amongst midfielders. He's got 2 FPL assists, I think, amongst that. And of course, he's also had 6 more points for clean sheets, which is worth noting because he plays for Arsenal. Saka hasn't got that because obviously he hasn't played as many games. But yeah, the underlying numbers aren't great, and neither of the analog ones really. He's only had kind of 9 shots, 4 in the box, 3 big chances, and in the top 10 for chances created for mids with the 17. The key with him obviously is set pieces, isn't it? If we link that to the monsters that Arsenal have in the opposition box at any time, that is the big sort of carrot when it comes to Rice. He's second for corners taken on his mids. I think second most successful, and what's more, he's taken more free kicks which are turned to crosses than any other midfielder, which he's found the most kind of it's like successful cross means that they found the man basically, and he's kind of found the most. So basically with Rice, you count there's some kind of long range worldies and things like that going on, but I suppose with him you bank on that kind of set piece mastery continuing, and if you think you can bank on that, you should probably bag Rice and go for it. I mean, long term, I think he could be a great hold. It's just kind of finding the right time, and I can't seem to find it right now. At the moment, kind of the tentative plan, Sam, is probably around sort of game week 17, I think, something like that, potentially.
Yeah. I think with Rice as well, if the one thing that came to my mind, you talking about the Christmas fixtures earlier, if someone said you have to pick one of Saka or Rice over Christmas, I'm 100% picking Rice because he will start and play every single game. Whereas Saka will get rotated in and out for Madueke at one random inconvenient moment. And that will just ruin any value you've got in him because 10 million, you need him starting and playing 90 every week. So at 3 and a bit million cheaper, you can save the money and probably bolster your 15 over Christmas, get the ex-Mins guys in. And over Christmas, Arsenal, this is anecdotal as anything, but they'll probably rely even more on set pieces because they won't want to maybe exude as much energy in open play because they're playing every 3 days for quite a while. So set pieces are going to be doubly as important to try and just eke out those 1-0s, 2-0 wins to make sure that they just continue on the charge without, let's say, blowing teams away. Not that they're doing that often right now anyway, but
definitely not.
Rice is just going to be secure, isn't he? Whereas Saka, I wouldn't be surprised if he even breaks down at some point because we've seen that happen so many times already.
Well, I think this time we're being very careful with Saka, but you
That's
are
true.
right, and I do like the fixtures over Christmas are all good, but they're kind of not so good that you'll be looking at it and thinking, oh, you know what, game week 18 on just after Boxing Day, we've got a really easy game, so he might miss that. It's Brighton at home, I think it is. Like if that game read Burnley away, you'd be looking at that and thinking, he probably won't be playing that. But I think the games are just difficult enough that a player like Rice will be playing, but we've got to factor in that that newly placed quarter final against Crystal Palace on the 23rd as well, as you said, as you kind of mentioned, with the playing one every couple of days. But yeah, I think he's one of those players that you'd expect, especially given the injuries in midfield, to be given kind of the bulk of the minutes, the lion's share of the minutes. And yeah, I just wonder, looking at long-term fixtures, if I'm kind of over-focusing too much on an Enzo for the next 2, and maybe I should just kind of get Rice and do that. That's an interesting kind of discussion for later on.
Yeah.
Look at our teams. But for now, let's move to the back and look at Mark Gahey very quickly. Just because he does seem to kind of be finding the routes to points quite a lot. He's risen 0.5. He's got over 100,000 transfers in again, Mark Gahey. He seems to, get DEFCON. He's got 10 DEFCONs now, 2 below kind of the likely lads of Van Dijk and Lacroix, and amassed 5 bonus. He's taken shots. I think it's like kind of 1 per game when I looked into it. And he's creating chances as well. And he's actually created the same number of big chances this year as the likes of Cucurella and Munoz, Sam, equal to Gabriel for this. So yeah, I wonder. And yeah, it seems mad he started at 4.5 for now. I suspect he maybe won the FPL have let rise a little. I don't know, a little tinfoil hat on. But yeah, Palace have got a good run of fixtures, but they've also got an absolute logjam of fixtures. What's going on there? I mean, surely he should be one who is in our consideration, though, right?
Yeah, he is now finally in my consideration properly because I think we've gone past the point where it's just pure coincidence. Like you said, the analog stats are actually looking pretty good for him for a centre back. And you mentioned Palace's logjam of fixtures. That is true, but one player who's going to play all of those matches is going to be Mark Gahey. So if you want that security, I don't think, like, put it this way, he would be the last player to miss out on any minutes. If he misses out, everyone's missing out. So yeah, at 5 million, it is a bit on the expensive side now, but he is being used in a pretty clever way in set piece situations, especially from the throw-ins, which has already been talked about a lot. He is the flick-on guy. He will knock them down, and people will get that extra touch to try and bury it in the back of the net, almost like a two-phase thing. And if he is involved in those in the future, then I see no reason that the assists will dry up anytime soon. They might not continue at this exact rate, but they don't really need to at 5 million. As long as you get the odd one every now and again, he hits the odd DEFCON every now and again. They're a good enough team defensively that he'll also get the clean sheets now and again. All of those things together combined to make a really good, well-valued, well-priced pick at 5 million. And the problem is now that without me knowing any other human beings who own this man, I go on live FPL on a Saturday and look at EO, and he's like 35% owned. And he gets a 10-pointer this week, and that buries me all of a sudden. And that's on top of all of the other Crystal Palace players that are doing damage to me as well. So I do just wonder if it's a player that maybe we should just have in as a bit of a hygiene pick, even if we can't quite scientifically prove why he is such a good pick. All of those individual factors I just mentioned maybe combined to just naturally make him a very good value pick, and we shouldn't overthink this one.
I think the problem that I've got is simply room at the inn. Just because Gabriel, Senesi, I'm likely to be bringing in Van Dijk. I've got Anderson, who's like a good kind of cover and defender, who doesn't get in the team every week, shall we say, because of the likes of the front three being fairly kind of quite well. If I do get Thiago, that would be Mateta, Thiago, and Haaland. Midfield would be Semenyo, probably Gakpo, Bruno, and Minte. All of whom have got good fixtures, sort of for the foreseeable. Maybe there'll be a spot at some point for, maybe a Gvardiol or something to come in. I just don't know where the room is to get this guy. And as you say, yeah, he's a hygiene pick. It might be one of those again where I feel like I have one of these every year that I just keep constantly bleeding points from because I just can't find a way to get him in my team. And maybe that's a failing on my part. That to have kind of blundered my way into not being able to find space for a Palace kind of defender. Maybe I should be looking at kind of junking the Gyökeres spot and going 4-4-2. Maybe that's what I should be doing. But yeah, it's absolutely crazy how many people seem to own this guy. But I, similar to you, cannot locate a single actual human who owns him. It's very, very odd. Yeah. Questions need to be asked of FPL Towers and the agendas that they're pushing these days. Utter FPL nonsense. That's what I say. But yeah, no, you're right. And I think that at 4.5 is ludicrous value, and even at 5, I think he's very good value. Would you look at him over Lacroix now?
Yeah, probably. I still quite like Lacroix. It just feels like a big bet to be going with Lacroix over Gahey, knowing that the ownership exists. I still have some faith that Lacroix balances out over time, but not enough to maybe take on the ownership, because we've already seen, and like I said, maybe some things we don't need to be able to explain scientifically. Like Gahey is in those situations from set pieces. He's good enough on the DEFCON, and he's still in the Palace defense, and he is nailed that he will just naturally pick up those points from a few different areas. Whereas with Lacroix, he's very much a DEFCON pick. He's doing well on the DEFCON, but not so much better that he's clearly better value than Gahey. And his XG threat last season was actually really good for a centre-back, but we haven't really seen much, if any, of that this year. So is there a little bit of a change that maybe we just haven't identified enough yet, that he's not that guy anymore, that we're just not going to see him on the end of too many of these? I think at this point, even if I can't prove it, my gut is telling me that Gahey's the pick. And maybe that's just because he's done the points, but I think there's something more to it than that, and I can't quite.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Do you know what I'm certain?
Is he playing for a big move? Is that what you? Is he playing for a big move? Is there X motivation about Gahey?
Maybe I don't know if it's that. I
it's
think
head
there's a
scratching, isn't it?
system thing, especially from set pieces, that's benefiting him. That will be quite technical. And if you're a set piece coach at Palace, you probably know exactly why he's getting more points than normal. But we're just sat here thinking, oh, he seems to be getting those knock-ons, so he's better now. Maybe it is that simple. Maybe he's the target man in the set piece situations all of a sudden over Lacroix, and they've worked out some systems that basically mean that he's the knock-on guy, and that equals points. So yeah. Anyway, the conspiracy is a bit. Have you ever seen? Is it the Finland conspiracy that doesn't actually exist?
Finland doesn't exist. It's
Gahey owners are all from Finland. That's the next conspiracy. They don't actually exist.
There's an interesting W just said in the chat. A big chunk of Gahey ownership could be dead teams who got him in early because he was like going to go to Liverpool maybe and forgot about their teams. Have Haaland captain, Semenyo, all of these things going on. No, it could be the case.
Well, they're in the top million. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, absolutely. They all are. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Part of me just kind of thinks that basically his spot is taken up by Senesi. I think that's kind of where it lies, because you've got Gabriel on one side, you've probably got who's going to be Virgil on the other side, and then unless you go for four at the back, it starts to get quite dicey who fits where. But my door is always open to one of these guys coming in. Speaking of my door always being open, it's that X again. It's João Pedro, Sam.
He's knocking.
Minus 0.86 underperformance last weekend. Ouch for you. And it's one of those that I wrestled about putting in here, because I feel like we've said all we need to say about João Pedro now. Except I've got to update you on his data distribution. And wow, we are such nerds. So I said last week that 70% of his underlying data had been registered in the first 4 weeks. And now it's even more ridiculous, Sam. 2.4 of his total 5.7 non-pen XGI has been amassed in one game versus Spurs alone. It's absolutely wild. He did FA for 5 games before it, and then in that game, someone put a penny in him and off he went.
That's classic João Pedro.
It's wild, isn't it?
So classic troll.
I mean, Brazil have got 2 friendlies international break, and a lot of people were saying, "Oh, no, we could be going there, could be going there." One's in London, one's in France. Don't worry about it. Forget about it. And I suppose the central question we've got to ask really is it the goals in the last game and in the game at the start of the season where he went off? Are those the games that define him, or are they the blanks? Either way, it's maddening inconsistency, isn't it?
It is. One thing I can tell you though, he's bloody good on bonus if he gets a return. So if you can find a week where he does get a return, he's getting you extra points from the bonus. So yeah, look, I mean, obviously I've got him in my team, but I'm not going to use this section to say, "Oh, told you so," blah blah blah, because I didn't. I wanted rid of him, and if I could have gotten to Mateta in one move, I would have. So this is not me trying to act smart after the fact. I have him through pure situation, but now we've seen the Spurs game. With the next 2 to come, Wolves and Burnley, I'm very happily holding on to him. He looked much fitter in the Spurs game. Having watched the last few games and then watch how he played, I watched the full 90 against Spurs. He looked much more mobile. They were able to find him in shot locations more often than they have been able to in the last five weeks, for whatever reason that is. Obviously, the goal itself is fortuitous. The other 4 shots, though, at least 2 or 3 of them were well-crafted chances that did intentionally pick him out in certain goal-scoring positions. So I don't think it's all just good fortune. They've clearly worked on it a little bit to try and get him into those areas. He was a bit unlucky not to return more, but I always like having the player that gets the shots away. And if he scores 1 of 5, that's fine. He still scored 1 of them, rather than being the Voltemada who only gets 1 shot a game, happens to have buried them. Everyone's feeling, oh, great about Voltemada. And then the 1 week where he misses that shot, it's like, oh, well, he only had 1 shot that week. And all of a sudden he's João Pedro of the last 5 game weeks. So the signs are better. I think the fixtures are good enough that if you had a problem in your side and you've already got Mateta, so let's say you've got Gyökeres, but you've got Mateta as another strike already, then João Pedro does make some sense. But you've got to have a thick skin and be prepared for more trolling, because you know what's coming next. It will be a blank with one shot on goal against Wolves, a blank with one shot on goal against Burnley, because that's just the way the bloke operates. You just got to ride the storm. You got to ride the waves, and
Yeah, you don't know when João Pedro's going to strike next. I mean, hold that thought then for my team later on, because I am one of those people that you've mentioned. On the other hand, one I am sure I'll bring in this week is Enzo Fernandez. It's also spoken about him quite a lot. Good underlying get data again. João Pedro is 4th overall for non-penalty try. Enzo is just behind him, literally by 0.1. Should have scored again this weekend, I think. Now top for joint big chances amongst midfielders. Second head of attempts now as well. Those runs into the box. 12 big chances missed now. Enzo Fernandez behind Dango and Salah, who have 15 big chances missed, but and penalties. It's what it is. I'm happy to go with him. I think I'm basically waiting for the carry bag fixture for Chelsea before I kind of do that. And I'm not going to overcomplicate it, really, looking at a Pedro Neto or something, who actually I have picked for my 1 week punt this week. And the other good thing is that, Argentina only seems to have one friendly during an international break, a money spinning friendly against Angola, in Angola. So he should be good for Burnley, unlike last time where we had all sorts of wrangles going on. I think that I'm more than happy to go with that.
Yeah, I don't think I've got much more to add on Enzo. I've had him for a couple of game weeks. I felt pretty unlucky not to get anything out of him. And the data's looking really good for someone at this price. There's a good chance he takes the next penalty. And I will probably be getting rid of him in game week 13. That's about it, really. Next 2 game weeks are good. I think for you, he makes sense as a purchase if it's a fairly short-term thing and you've got a plan to get rid in 13. But he's one of those players that you don't ever need to sell, because the minutes will always be good. The data will always be all right. And he does have a knack of just returning fairly consistently across the season. So let's say you've got other problems in game week 13 or 14. You don't need to sell him. He'll be fine. I wouldn't bank on returns in game week 13 against Arsenal specifically, but it'll tick along. No. So he's never a bad player to own. But yeah, if you're going to get him now for the next 2 game weeks specifically.
Absolutely. Wolves at home and Burnley away. The final one, Bowen, hit the with a big chance. 5 shot creating actions last game. Burnley, worse for HGC, are up next. So the ultimate example of the kind of aggression we've been discussing. In terms of his data profile is very interesting, Sam. I wonder what you make of this. I'll tell you what I think as well. 3rd for shots taken amongst strikers, 6th for shots in the box. He's only had 1 big chance, one of the only strikers other than Evan Nilsson, predictably Calvert-Lewin and Raul Jimenez, not to have scored one as well. He's created chances for others as well. He's 2nd for chances created. And fun stat, Sam, he's had the most crosses of any forward, made the most crosses of any forward by a country mile. He's attempted 31 crosses this year, with the second just 8. João Pedro. So, yeah, this is not a striker. He's a winger.
No. And he's been misclassified.
Absolutely. He benefits from the bonus if he scores from being a striker, not the extra point of scoring because he's a mid and doesn't get the clean sheets either. His heat map, I looked at the last few years, it's exactly the same pretty much this year. Maybe that's my own untrained eye, but there's a little bit less time in on the left hand side of the pitch. But I mean, it's just a silly decision to put him in that price, at his price and in that position. I think, as we said at the start of the year, symptomatic of that one game against Burnley straight away, and probably a need for strikers because of the classifications they did. But on a short-term basis, is him versus Burnley potentially interesting? And is there even mileage if you are being super aggressive and buying him for Burnley and chaining him on to Thiago the next week or indeed the week after?
If I had 4 or 5 free transfers, I might, but outside of that, probably not. And maybe that's just me being a bit flippant about it. It is a very good fixture, but I think unless I'm in that situation where I've got transfers to burn, I'm at the point now where I don't really want to be taking too many 1 week punts for the reasons I mentioned earlier, where I feel like if I can use those transfers to set up a little bit more long term, something will always come up. Every week there seems to be an injury or a new hot topic that all of a sudden he's the must-buy player, and Burmo coming out of nowhere a couple of weeks ago, etc., that if I've used a free transfer for 1 week to get to Bowen and then he blanks against Burnley, which is not impossible, I think he'll do something, but it's not impossible that he blanks. We've seen it happen with good players several times before. Haaland managed it against Southampton last season, so it does happen.
He did score.
Second game.
Oh, second game. Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, thank you. Just had to get that in there.
I thought you meant the triple cap. I thought you meant the triple cap. The triple captain gate.
Although again, that was that's maybe another example that it doesn't always pay off.
I'm not bitter.
Yeah, not at all. So yeah, it's not only one free transfer to get there; it's one free transfer to get away from him, and he's got Bournemouth followed by Liverpool after that. I think there are better strikers out there around that sort of price. So yeah, I understand it if you're going really hyper aggressive on it, but I always try to look 1 week after the 1 week punt, and I'm like, will I want him in my side? Almost certainly not. So not one for me, I don't think.
Yeah, fine. I think I've definitely flirted with it because obviously he has the talisman of West Ham, etc., and so on.
He's never a bad pick because he'll just tick along. But
no, and like Bournemouth away in 12 before you then get rid of him in 13. I mean, it is what it is. But I feel like it's. I'm kind of, from speaking to you today. I'll say later on my notes. I said, I'm kind of, I can't remember what it was. I think it was kind of like 40% by Thiago and then 30% Bowen and Pedro. But probably I think it's probably getting closer with being just between the Pedro and Bowen thing, which we'll discuss in a little bit. Mm-hmm. All right, excellent. On to 1 week punt update, and we both had pretty decent weeks last week. You especially.
Yeah, I went rice, baby. 13 points. Very happy with that. It just gutted I can't use him again this season because he seems to be ticking along very nicely. So yeah, 13 points. I needed it to close the gap a little bit, but you went and returned as well.
Just about. I mean, Gyökeres came off obviously at half time, and it's now been confirmed. I did mention it earlier on, but it has been confirmed that he'll be missing the Sunderland game at least. But yeah, both got points, and you're right back in it. So before it was quite a gap. Now it's 50 to me, 35 to you, and both of our jokers are available. Don't know if we're going to use one. I don't think we're going to bother thinking about. You have to use one before game week 19 or whatever it is. I'm not sure I can bother to do that.
Nah,
and police it. And this week for me, it's Pedro Neto. Old club narrative and all that sort of thing. Second highest underperformer XGI wise last week. I think it's going to be 2 weeks of Chelsea. But I do kind of fancy Neto to do something against Old team.
Yeah, nice. I like it, and it looks like he's going to be past fit as well. I think he might miss the midweek game, but then I think Maresca said he's going to be okay.
I'll change it if Maresca's pretty honest, so I will change it to someone else if it does turn out. I'll get Esteval in or something like that.
Yeah, I thought you'd say Esteval. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like for like. And in the spirit of what we just talked about, I wouldn't pick him myself in an FPL team because it is a 1 week thing. But Jared Bowen against Burnley seems like a good opportunity to be using him, and I doubt I'll use him later on. So yeah, fingers crossed that he does indeed do the business in 1 game week, and anyone who is tempted to go there for 1 week only is rewarded, and so am I. So Jared Bowen for me.
Nice. I like it a lot. All right, on to best captain this week. So maybe people looking the other way, Sam. Looking at maybe captaining a Chelsea asset. I know friend of the pod, James, is looking at the FPL Kevin, the Fulham ITK is looking at Enzo. And some people may be looking at Mateta and stuff like that to go against Haaland against Liverpool. But I don't know. I just kind of don't really see the need to change it this week. What about you?
No, Liverpool they've actually done all right today by the looks of it against Madrid as well. I think, are they still 1-up? Yeah, 1-0 at 90th minute. Obviously kept a clean sheet in the week before, but generally speaking, they've looked a little bit open at the back, especially to like those rapid counterattacks and Man City showed that against Bournemouth. They're very good in those areas. And again, we knew that would be the case with Erling Haaland. You do not give him that sort of time. And I get the feeling that if Haaland can get into those 1v1 situations with a high line where the Liverpool players are turning and pedaling back towards their own goal, it's going to spell disaster. So look, I mean, even without all of that context, without me trying to paint a picture of how I think the match is going to go, it's Erling Haaland who's in just sensational form, especially at home, against a team that have struggled a bit defensively. So yeah, for me, it's as simple as I don't get me wrong, I like owning the Chelsea players, João Pedro and Enzo. I think are great options this week, but I don't think they're captains ahead of Haaland for me. And the same goes for Crystal Palace at home to Brighton. Fine to own. I'm very happy to own Sarr, but Brighton are a decent enough defence, although the data's not that different to Liverpool, it must be said.
It's the same. It's not different to Wolves either, incredibly.
Wolves is an interesting one, yeah.
I double check that.
It is right, because Wolves defensively, they went through a little patch recently where they were actually quite tight in terms of the underlying data, but just not paying dividends on the pitch.
No.
But yeah, I think just Erling Haaland is a cut above all of these options as a player. So I think it would take a lot for me to look elsewhere right now.
I think
it's funny that Saka's not on this list where it's Sunderland. That just goes to show how good Sunderland have been.
Yeah, that's it. Sunderland have been good. The fourth best defense overall in terms of XGC. I would the only thing, if City were away, maybe I'd be looking at other options a tiny bit more. And I think maybe next week will be more interesting discussion about away at St James's Park. This week, I think because they're at home, and for the kind of the more kind of qualitative factors that you've mentioned, I think that I'm probably all right on Haaland. But if you are going to go against, I think that's absolutely fine as well. And yeah, I can see the logic in doing so.
Yeah, that's fine. And we always have to say, yeah, you can always choose your own battles and stuff. It's not one for me this week. I'm going with Haaland, I think.
Yeah, nice one. All right, on to our teams. There's a fair bit to discuss here, so come into it good times. So yeah, I've got 2 free transfers. I've got Gordon and Gyökeres to get rid of. The rest of my teams, as I discussed earlier on. And the world is basically my oyster here, Sam. I think the midfielder pick, I think I'm 80-20 Enzo versus Rice, and I think I was underthinking Enzo. It's just that forward pick that I'm just not sure about. So I've got to get rid of Gyökeres now. I've got Anderson coming in against Everton if I didn't make the move. But I think I will make the move here and be kind of proactive, because I think the context, as we've discussed a lot on this, lends itself to it. And I think that it's kind of probably between Pedro and doubling up on the Chelsea attack, or going with Thiago as sort of a long-term kind of pick till New Year, effectively. And that's probably the one that's kind of most. I'm less sure. I'm least sure of, just because basically Thiago in game week 13 for that Burnley at home game, pretty much every path that I've looked at, he comes in for that week. Because after Arsenal, you've got Spurs away, and you've got Leeds and Wolves at home during that time frame over Christmas. And I think that's just, at that price, and given the fact that he's probably Brentford's talisman and all this sort of thing, I feel like he's probably just the one to be buying in. So getting ahead of the curve, as you said to me over the last couple of days, does appeal to me. But what also appeals to me, given my OR, although this year I am admittedly kind of taking more of a slow and steady approach to hoping for a 1 week to kind of be the moonshot, it does appeal to me to have Pedro for a couple of weeks, and I can still kind of make that work in terms of getting him in, then removing him for Thiago in 13. I'd have to roll on game week 12 after international break, which is absolutely fine because my team looks good anyway for that week. So,
and you've got bench cover, you've got plenty of depth.
Yeah, exactly. I think that Tarkovsky off the bench would be kind of what would be going on that week. So I think it's Anderson has got Sunderland, I'm going to say, I think, in game week 12. Yeah, he does. So it's very, very close between those two and what I do. I mean, the Thiago basically saves me a transfer. But it's kind of like, do I even need to save transfers right now?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah. Do I need it?
Whole theme of the pod. Yeah. Thiago's a great long-term pick. I suppose to play devil's advocate for that, and out of the two, I think if I only had 2 free transfers right now, I would probably go with Thiago myself. But what I will add to that is that so often in the past, I think it happened with Cunha last year. I have had a bit of a history of picking the long-term pick a week or two before I'd actually really want them, and then something happens, like injury, yellow cards. I think he might be one of the players on 3. Double check that. I can't remember exactly. But those sort of things can happen in the time which you are waiting for them to to get to the good fixtures. And although it's an extra free transfer later on to get there, at least at the point you buy them, you know that they are safe for the week you actually want them. So I do wonder if it is actually the better play with João Pedro and using the extra free transfer, because you just don't know what will happen in a couple of game weeks. That being said, I like the restructuring angle. Like Gyökeres out for a couple of weeks looks like a good opportunity to slightly shift the funds around, get Thiago in, and then you can bolster your midfield a little bit. So not much in it for me. Would you be at all tempted to completely burn the spot and just go down to like a GU, and then you've got the money to reshuffle into a 4-4-2 or a 3-5-2?
Yeah, if I had more than 2 free transfers, then I would, which is
Fine.
squarely Anthony Gordon's fault. Not my fault, nothing to do with me. He lured me in with his luscious piss hair and made me buy him. God, what an awful transfer that was. Oh, there's an all timer. But yeah, because if I had more transfers than I do, then I would. But I don't know whether it's, I'd be taking either. There is some logic to taking a hit, but I'm not really fancying it, if that makes sense. Like I kind of quite like the fact that I haven't taken a hit this year, and I might not all year. So, and to be fair, like even Gyökeres down to João Pedro is 1.6 million freed up. And João Pedro and maybe Enzo don't last more than 2 weeks, whereas Thiago would last more. Thiago would come in eventually, but I think the 3 yellow cards thing is something that's worth bearing in mind actually a little bit. And plus, I've got a funny feeling that João Pedro likes scoring against Arsenal.
Yeah.
He did do that last year, didn't he? When most of us had sold.
I think one was it a penalty? I think.
I think he's.
I had him for that week, and I was feeling very smug. A bit like this week, weirdly.
Yeah, and I just wonder whether like it's very much trapped between that sort of longer term strategic thing and the short term benefit on offer. Give my OR. I just wonder whether it's time to just go for broke and hope that I can kind of just spike a good bit of variance over the next couple of weeks. I think you've convinced me. I think going on the aggressive a little bit with the fixtures Chelsea have got, they are the 2 best teams in the league to be taking on right now. And we don't even know if Wolves are going to have a manager in place by the weekend, do we? So yeah, I'd probably go for it. I think probably go for it, and then Thiago can wait for a while, wait until the fixtures turn, because you just don't know what will happen in the meantime. So take the points on the board. Like you said, we get the extra free transfers later on, so you can afford to be a little bit more aggressive now. So yeah, I understand it. Would you be tempted at all? The thing is, Enzo's a really good pick, so I was just going to ask, would you be tempted at all to, instead of Enzo, go up to like Mbermo or something? But it's Enzo, really. I think you need a Chelsea, right?
So João Pedro and then
João Pedro and Mbumo, maybe. I mean, that's definitely crossed my mind, and Rice has crossed my mind as well. And both of them have. I just think that because of the nature of the 2 teams that they're about to play, it feels kind of almost negligent to go the other way, if that makes sense. Like,
I get it.
I think we've discussed United's fixtures being good, but they're not standout good. The standout good is game week 19 to 21 when they've got Wolves, Leeds, and Burnley.
Yeah, and then Burma will be gone by then. So
yeah, that's Cunha time. Which is a completely different discussion. Um, yeah, no, there are ways I could do it. Maybe I could be like, you know what, I think Rice is the one to buy, hold, and just kind of leave there. But that it creates another issue where I'm like, well, what the F do I do in terms of Liverpool? Because that's like the designated sort of Gakpo spot. And if I had more free transfers, then maybe I'd have more flex. But here, because I've only got 2, I've got to work within those parameters unless I want to take a hit, which I don't really want to do.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, João Pedro, I'm going to call sorry, I'm going to hang on, wait a minute, I'll get my phone out. You out tonight?
You up?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Here we go again, Sam. I'm going to blame you squarely if it goes wrong, but I'm going to
Please
kind
feel
of claim.
free.
I'm going to claim my own genius if it goes right. You know,
Of course, yeah.
As I said to you last week, when you were thinking about selling João Pedro, you probably feel a lot better about it now, keeping him moving on to your team.
I do. So yeah, my team as it stands: Pope in goal, we're at Brentford, double Arsenal defence, Gabriel Timber, we're at Sunderland. Senesi currently starts away at Villa, but that could be Anderson away at Everton, either or. There's really not much in it between those two, both very likely to hit DEFCON. In my midfield, Enzo, Semenyo, Saka, Sarr. All of them I'm pretty happy with. Saka being the most expensive would be the one I'm most concerned with not returning at the moment, but I still don't think he's far away. And given that Gyökeres is out this game week, he's definitely on pens, which does help a little bit. Then up front, João Pedro, Voltemada, who I'm a bit concerned by, and Haaland's captain. Again, I'm going to reference my bench here. I've got Dubravka away at West Ham, Longstaff and Rodon away at Nottingham Forest, and of course Anderson / Senesi, whichever I decide, away at Everton or Aston Villa, respectively. So I've got 3 free transfers, no money in the bank. My big question is whether or not I bench boost. I'm minded to just get it done, even though I don't love the fixtures on the bench. Like I think they're okay. If I can get 1 return out of those players, I think it's fine. Like if I can get 13, 14 points on the bench boost, I'm chuffed. If it's 10, I will take it and run and just get it done. I'm just ever so slightly concerned about a couple of players, and those 2 players are Voltemada and Longstaff. Voltemada, I feel like I'll know more about before the deadline because they play tomorrow. Yeah. And I'll probably get a fair bit of information from that. Let's say he starts and gets 60 minutes, plays reasonably well, gets subbed off. I will feel much more comfortable about it. But if something weird happens, like he gets benched or he has a bit of a stinker, I will just be looking over my shoulder a little bit worried about that, especially given I don't have Mateta. It would be lovely to have that as a Mateta slot instead of Voltemada right now. And then the other issue is Longstaff. And if I am at all worried that he doesn't start that game, that could ruin the bench boost. And again, I've got no money. So it needs to be another 4.9 million player unless I use 3 free transfers to upgrade Voltemada to Mateta, upgrade Longstaff to someone, and downgrade someone somewhere. But I gave you this team without giving you any of this information at the start of the week, and your initial reaction was looks fine, roll, right? And I was like, okay, that makes me feel slightly better. Like there's no obvious weaknesses here. It's just whether or not it's good enough to bench boost with. What do you think?
I think just get it launched, get rid of it. Honestly, it's going to be a millstone around your neck every week. I think you got some good advice from our man Ed, FPL Rhinos, earlier on X, and
I did.
I think I'll be and Stoop mentioned. Stoop got back to you as well, didn't he? I think that they're both kind of they'll
both think we'll play.
Yeah, I think so. I think you've got a decent chance for 70 minutes. I mean, looking at the 4.9s, yeah, you got Vifa, you got Jules,
quite like Vifa.
You've got Ayari, yeah, Vifa was really good on DEFCON. I remember
14 average. So every time he's played like the majority of minutes, he's hit DEFCON so far this season. His ratio is ridiculous.
Yeah, we looked at it in preseason, didn't we? I think he's playing right back, if I remember correctly. But yeah,
honestly, I have no idea.
Yeah, definitely. I think I just bench boost it and just get rid of it. The only thing that has come to mind a tiny bit, just because he's on the brain now from speaking about him a little bit, and actually I've literally just noticed that someone's mentioned in the chat as well, Martin did in the chat. Could Voltemada to Thiago and an upgrade in Longstaff? but then I suppose you're going to end up with a bit of a benching headache kind of going forward. And that could be an option potentially.
Yeah, so the route there would be Thiago, and then Longstaff would become Minter probably. But then I've got a strong 8. So it's good for a bench boost, possibly this week. Also, I think mentioned in the chat, game week 13, possibly. I haven't really looked at it. But by that point, I would expect my team looks a little bit different anyway. So do you take the opportunity right now because it's in front of you, or do you wait? And I've already waited once or twice this season, and then injuries come up and other issues occur. The freedom of getting your bench boost out of the way, even if it's slightly suboptimal, might be the better way of playing it to save the transfers. And then again, it's a reshuffle to distribute funds into the playing 11 afterwards.
You've only got one player to lose, who's probably Longstaff for 0.5, or to go down to a King or Potts or something, right? I think I just get rid of it, honestly. I think if you do kind of feel confident, I think you should be fairly confident. But if you feel confident, then the week that Walter is probably all right for Brentford, which I think it should be. I can't really see them playing a Sula in that game, for example. And you really know that Longstaff would be all right. Just get it done, get it over with, and forget about it. Because at the end of the day, I mean, obviously, the last couple of weeks, if people did bench boost and got that kind of 40-pointer, that's really the exception rather than the norm of bench boost at the moment. It does feel like we're looking at kind of 12 points being the bare minimum for not even that, 8 points being good. So ceiling is low, expectations low. I think just get rid of it and just move on with your life, basically.
And at the end of the day, like we focus so much on a bench boost, and we'll do this later on again in the season. We're talking about the difference of, like, the lowest I've scored on my bench this season is 7 points. The highest is 18. So the range so far is 11 points. So that's one player going big 1 week. Like, that's not a huge point of difference. So it's probably just not worth stressing over that much. And there's so much luck that's involved in any given specific game week in getting it right. Like, all it takes is one kind of BS Anderson attacking return, and all of a sudden this bench boost is a success, even if none of them keep a clean sheet. So I think if they're all fit and I don't get spooked off of Voltemard or whatever, I think it might just be worth going with. Would you be tempted? So bench boost aside, would you be tempted at all to try and find a route for Mateta from Voltemada? And if so, is there anything obvious I'm missing here?
I think you haven't really got much to play with, have you?
Like, if Saka down to Bruno would be one way, but that feels like forcing it a bit this week.
It sort of does, but I'm as much as I love Bukayo, I don't think he's worth the money.
I don't either, to be honest. But is it worth a transfer now?
If you weren't bench boosting, no. But because you are bench boosting, you can justify that to yourself, would be how I'd look at it. Because if you're selling Saka, a player that you're convinced isn't worth the money, for a player that you think you're going to have and own for the long haul in a Bruno, and you're selling Automade, who you have reservations about anyway when you wildcarded, for a player that you don't have reservations about in Mateta, and so you're simultaneously strengthening your team, removing a doubt for bench boost that you may have, and also kind of setting yourself up for the long term. I can see the logic there. I personally don't hate that at all. But obviously, you coming out, which is something you're going to have to wear this week, and say, right, okay, I don't have Saka for an Arsenal game against a new promoted side, but
intentionally sold Saka for that game.
The ceiling is not going to be very high for Arsenal attacking wise. Like, we all go on a spate of winning games 3 or 4-0, but at the moment, especially with Gyökeres out as well, which can have an impact on the attacking pattern. Obviously, we've won 3-0 tonight with Marino, who I haven't mentioned tonight, but Marino being the striker. But I mean, he's going to be, as we've seen, 1-0 to the Arsenal. That's going to be all it is. And maybe we'll see Saka give Rain Dildo a really difficult time, or him or Hume he's up against. I'm not sure which one. But I think over long term, I think you'll get more joy out of owning Bruno just because you love the guy.
I
And
agree.
I'm
Long term,
coming round to it.
Yeah.
And then if you look forward as well, when's the time that you're going to make that transfer anyway? And if it
Probably
aids your
next
bench
week,
boost,
honestly.
if it aids your bench boost right now, then why not just do it? Get out of the way. It's all done. You can just sleep easy at night. You know. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't really see much negative about doing that. Actually, if you're convinced, because I am.
Yeah. I'd have to properly have a think about whether or not I'm comfortable selling a player like Saka
Yeah.
against the promoted club. That's the problem. It feels wrong. Even though I completely accept and agree with the logic, and it is on my roster as like one of the options I've got in the chat. DM McDonald mentioning downgrading João Pedro to help fund Mateta, so double striker swap. I think if he hadn't looked as good as he did against Spurs, I'd be more tempted, but it's two good fixtures and it looked more like he was getting into the game and fully fit again, which we haven't seen recently. So I'm hesitant to get rid of him now, although I do understand the point that they're making in the chat. So thank you for that. And then the other option is Pope down to a 4.5. So I could do Pope to Petrovic or to Kelleher. And then Voltemada becomes Mateta with 2 free transfers. That is possible.
Yep, that is very, very possible, actually. Again, goalkeeper transfer, not one you're going to. Well, obviously, I get very excited by goalkeeper transfers. It says long-term listeners to the pod know. And
yeah,
I mean, that's not the sexiest thing I've ever heard in my life, not going to lie.
Yeah.
But I think that, again, that is absolutely fine. I do wonder whether that Saka move, because Saka because next week you have the same problem with Saka. Yeah, I'm selling Saka before the North London derby. What's wrong with me? He's going to be super motivated about doing that because he's an Arsenal boy.
Yeah.
At least this week you remove a little bit of the. Every week's going to be an emotional hedge, an emotional exposure to selling that guy. Yeah, game week 13, I think, is probably the time to sell him if you're not sure. The Chelsea away game. I don't know.
That was my original plan. Yeah, 12 or 13 for Saka to either Salah. That was again obviously speculative, or down to Bruno. That I never really planned on having Saka past game week 13 at the latest. So that will probably happen. It's just whether or not I bring it forward.
I'd be I think I'd probably stick to the Saka out and of all the options available, I'd probably stick to the Saka out in game week 13 plan. If you're convinced that Longstaff plays, which I think we should be, I'd stick to the Saka out for Chelsea plan, and I'd probably look at selling Pope for Kelleher or something like that. All the goalkeepers apart from Raya, I'm going to confidently say, are all pieces of SHIT. Do that and then use that money to get Voltemada up to Mateta and use bench boost and just forget about it. I think that feels like the best option to me and satisfies all your goals. And then in game week 13, swap Saka over for Bruno, who's got Crystal Palace away, which is obviously an amazing fixture. But after that, things start to get very good for Man United. So I think do that because that satisfies all parts of your plan. You're not really going to be, if Pope throws a penalty and gets like a 25-pointer, you can be like, well, you know what? I couldn't have really counted for that. But Saka's got that bigger risk of really effing your weekend up, doesn't he? So, I do that. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. See how you feel by Friday. But I think goalkeeper transfer down and then move Mortemade to Mateta, who you clearly really want, just not really too sure how to get there. Just do that and get on.
I really want Mateta. I'm really not happy about him not being in my side right now. So it just depends how desperate I am to have him. And again, like any 2 transfers I use this week are 2 transfers I can't use in a couple of weeks for Liverpool players or whatever. So there are opportunity costs to it that I need to weigh in. But every week that I don't have Mateta and I do have a player like Voltemada who's getting like 1 or 2 shots a game versus Mateta who's getting 5 or 6, and with good fixtures, it doesn't feel right. Okay,
get it done.
Enough about me. But thank you very much, and thank you everyone in the chat as well for giving your views as well. I really do appreciate that. Anything else to discuss today, Tom, or shall we wrap it up?
No, let's wrap it up for now, I think.
Let's do it. Well, thank you all so much for listening. We do really appreciate it. We've kept it to a tight 90 minutes, which is always good to see. We were Who Got the Assist. You can find us on Blue Sky at Who Got the Assist, all written out one word, or FPL Pricey for me. On X at WGTA_FPL. Again, FPL Pricey for me on there. And on YouTube, Who Got the Assist, all written out. And I'm over there at FPL Pricey. My live stream will be on is it Friday night, I think, this week?
Yeah,
Saturday deadline. Yeah, so I'll do a pre-deadline stream on the Friday night. Come and join in if you fancy it. If you could give the pod a 5-star rating wherever you're listening, that would be great. If you could follow us on those socials, also fantastic. And of course, if you could leave a like and hit subscribe wherever you're leave a like or hit subscribe on YouTube if you're watching along live. That would be greatly appreciated. All of those things do really help us out. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, everybody, for watching and listening. We hope just you think about whether this is the time to go on the attack in FPL. Good luck this game week. Be back next week for our international break pod, which will be a more zoomed out look at how the template has evolved over the season, if it feels different from the others, and if that's why maybe some, like me, are really struggling this year. Join us for that when we see you next Tuesday.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?